We're going to talk about inner classes, nested classes, and closures in this video. These are all three variations of the same thing. Actually, we'll also throw in method references. So there are really four variations of the same thing. It used to be, when Java first came out for 1.0, you could only have top-level classes. That means you couldn't put a class inside of another class. In Java 1.1, they changed that. And that got changed, I don't want to say primarily for the GUI, but the GUI stuff was done at the same time, and it definitely influenced it. So we'll just start off with main. So I will start off with what it would be like to begin with, and then I'll modify the exact same program a whole bunch of different ways to see all the ways that it happens. So we'll make a simple thing. So an able thing typically means it's an interface, not always, but that's a common naming convention. So I'm going to make this one an interface. Doesn't have to be. So make a class called Yeller, which will speak as all uppercase. I'm going to, because of the way different things work, I'm going to do all of this in one, the rest of the stuff in one file. Normally I'd put this as a top-level class as in its own file, but a top-level class simply means a class that is not inside of another class. You can only have one public top-level class per file, and the public class, main, has to match the file name, main.java. So something's wrong with this code. See if you can guess what's wrong with the code. Pause and figure it out. Right? The problem is that we are going to make Yeller assigned to a speakable, but Yeller does not implement speakable. So we have to do that. And when we implement a class, we have to override the methods. Right. So now it's going to take whatever we give it and yell it. Right. So give this a try, we'll run it. It should print out all uppercase hello. There we go. So turns out, actually let me do one more thing. We're going to change this. So we're just getting a method that's going to take a speaker. So what I'm going to say here is that I want to do I want to say something with that speaker, and I want that thing to be hello. And run that and just make sure it still works. Still works, it's all good. So with Java 1.8, what they said is you can actually take a class and put it anywhere inside of anything. Now this doesn't work. Take a guess as to why this doesn't work. So pause and guess. So the problem is we are accessing a static method, or using a static method to try and access a non-static thing. It's not allowed. So we just have to make this static. Doesn't have to be made private, but we should. So we can run this and see if it works. And it still works. So that means that this class, the implementation of this class is tied to the implementation of main. Basically, it can only be used within the context of main. And we saw this already with the map, right? The map has an entry, which has the key value pair in it. But I literally said we can put it anywhere, so we could put it in here. It can't be private and it doesn't need to be static. You can't make it static anymore, but we can just put it inside of there. We can put it inside of an if statement if we want. Anywhere where these curly braces are, a scope, we can add a class. It is very rare that you would add a class in here, but it's totally allowed. And we can actually do this one other thing, which is kind of wacky. We can get rid of this. And we can actually say, and this is going to blow your mind a little bit, because we've been lying to you your entire life. Okay, not your entire life, but the entire time we've told you about Java, where you can't say new on an interface. Right? You can't create an instance of an interface. But I just said new on an interface. See if it works. It does. This is what's called an anonymous inner class. So what it's really doing is actually saying, make me a new class that implements Speakable, right? And if we were to go look at this output directory, you'll see there's this, yeah, we do see, it doesn't actually show us the classes, which is interesting. So I'd have to go to the command line. So that's not going to help. I need to go open in terminal. Okay. We have to do an ls in there. We see this main $1.class, right? We see main class, that goes with main. And we see the Speakable class, that goes with Speakable. And then there's this $1. Well, I said it was an anonymous inner class. That means it doesn't have a name. But the compiler can't actually deal with things that don't have names, so it gives it one. So it puts this main is the class that this class is inside, and it is the first anonymous inner class. I can make another one, just so we can see it. So make one that would whisper, right? And it's going to do 2 lowercase this time. And we can run that. All uppercase, all lowercase. And if we go back to the terminal and do ls, we see main $2. Well, this is main $1, and this one's main $2. The reason why I know that is this one occurred first in the file, this one occurred second in the file. So we can make these classes anywhere we want, even in an assignment statement. And I'll do one better. Get rid of this variable entirely, and I will just put it in here. I do the same thing here. Still works. So, and if we were to go to the terminal, do the ls, we'll get the exact same thing, main $1 and main $2. So this was very common up until fairly recently when they added closures, which I guess is in Java 1.8. So it could be wrong on that, but I think that's what it was. So imagine you're writing a UI, a GUI, and you want a button to do something. When I press a button, I want this to happen. What would have to happen originally is you'd have to make a class that had a method that did the action. So you'd have one file with the GUI, where the button is, and a whole other file that did the actual, this is what happens when this button gets pressed. And it's a pain because you probably want to set a variable that's inside of this class and all that. So what they said was, okay, we'll allow you to do classes inside of the file, and then you can have all that in one place. And here now this becomes like when I press this button, right? So button.add event listener. When I press the button, I'll call this code. So the code is getting closer and closer and closer to where it's being used. Personally, I hate these things because what happens if I'm going to do the same thing in two places? Now I've got the exact same code in two places and I have to keep it in sync. So I actually don't code this way. I don't like the anonymous inner classes. However, they're a thing. And you can't extend from them either and all that. So I typically only do the inner classes, not the anonymous inner classes. But this is even pretty verbose. So they added a new thing, which is we're going to take we have this closure. So this is a function that takes a parameter. And we can even do final string stir. And it's got some code. Like that. I'm just going to get rid of this from now. And, oh, that was stir. I'm going to add 2 uppercase. So there we go. It's all uppercase hello now. So this is much smaller. This is a thing called a closure. Because it's only one line, we can get rid of the brackets as well. Like that. And there we go. We also don't need to have the string. We can just say it's a var, and then it will infer what it is, and it knows it say something, takes a speakable. So speakable takes a string, so the var becomes string. Okay, that works too. You don't even have to have that. You can just say stir, because if you're just going to declare everything as var, why you don't even need it at all. So all we have is here's the variable name, and we're going to use it. And it knows that it's a string because you can infer it, because again, speakable takes a string. If we didn't want to do the 2 uppercase, we just wanted to print out the string, there's one more thing we can do to simplify this, which is we can get rid of this completely and use a method reference, which just says we're going to, for this thing here, the argument that gets passed in, which is this thing here, we're going to call system.println on it. So this is much more likely what I'm going to use. We can make our own method. It just has to it just has to match what's expected here. Void speak that takes a string, void upper that takes a string. So it doesn't, this is not to be called speak, it's just saying that I'm going to call a method here that has the same signature. It's got a void and it takes a string. So we're going to make 2 methods, one called upper, one called lower. Or actually, we'll keep with the names we used before. So this is yell, and this is whisper. So what I can say here is main yell, run that, and it'll be all uppercase. Change this to whisper, and it'll be all lowercase. So this is how I probably would code now if I was doing a UI. I would say in my button, when you press it, call this method over here, and it'll just happen down here, which is a far nicer way than what we used to have to do. You'll see the GUI code later on in the course, and we'll see what that looks like. But there we go. So you've got what we've covered here is quite simple, but it's quite powerful. We have the ability to put a class anywhere we want, as long as it's within braces, right? You can actually declare a class as part of an assignment statement. I wouldn't, but you can. You can declare a class inside of a method call. Again, I wouldn't, but you could. You can also use closures, or method references. And that's the preferred way now. So the anonymous inner classes, generally we, how do I say generally? The number of times where we use them is significantly reduced now. So you wouldn't use them to replace the map entry, but you would use them to replace the button listener stuff. And the button listener stuff, that kind of thing, is way more common than the map entry. So most cases of inner classes have now been replaced with method references or closures. Closures work really well as well. They integrated them at the same time with collections. So I'm going to do another video which is all about closures and collections. Actually, I've already done the video. I'm just going to move it from the other thing into here because it did a